So these bodies. So do a bit of an inventory. How have I felt this week? And if there are noticeable physical signals, see them as signals. Don't just dismiss them as symptoms that you want to get rid of.
Yeah.
Maybe look into what the message is.
That's so powerful, just because oftentimes we have something that happens within ourselves and we think it's something wrong with us, but instead you're inviting to look at it as a signal, as our bodies are so intelligent.
Absolutely.
It's there for a reason. So thank you for the headache, because there's something that is going on within me that if I didn't have the headache would have a uglier manifestation down the road.
That's right.
So question number 4 is, what is the hidden story behind my inability to say no?
Okay, so I come to LA, I call you up, do we have coffee? You've been up all night, you don't feel like it, but you don't say no. What's the story? Why don't you say no? If I say no, then
my friend might not like me.
Yeah.
What does that mean about who I am as a friend?
Yeah, I'm selfish.
Yeah, all the meaning.
So that's what I mean. What's the story that you're telling yourself why you're not saying no?
Yeah.
So, and by the way, if a friend doesn't like you for not having coffee, what kind of a friend are they anyway?
Yeah.
But if being liked is a big value to you, because you weren't, then they won't like me. I better not be myself, because if I'm So what's the story? What's the hidden belief? And by the way, is it really selfish to say no when I've been up all night? Is that really what selfishness is about? Not exactly.
Yeah. So good. And then, the question 5 is just deeper inquiry, right? Where did I learn these stories? And we've been speaking to that.
And the origin is childhood.
Right.
So there's some childhood programming going on. At some point I learned that if I say no, that's selfish. Somewhere I learned that if I say no authentically, they won't like me. And I was desperate to be liked, to be accepted. So I learned how not to say no.
Mm. It's powerful. In the book you shared Jamie Lee Curtis's quote, in the society, there is a genocide of authenticity.
Is that in the book?
Maybe it's not. Maybe I got it from somewhere else.
I was going to put it in there.
Okay.
But then I thought I've quoted her because she said it, and I think it's a wonderful quote.
Yeah.
But we ended up not bringing the book.
Okay.
I thought maybe because it's a bit too harsh a word,
Well, yeah. I think if anyone could say it, maybe you can. But regardless, that's a very powerful pointer to, like we were speaking to, our inability to say no. We're going to develop friendships, relationships, in our external reality based off of the inauthentic version of ourselves that we hold on to so dearly, right? And then coming back into discovering who we are, going through this process, reclaiming our authentic selves, oftentimes there will be a crumbling of our world and the relationships that were attached to the inauthentic version of ourselves.
That's right.
So what words of advice do you have for people that are maybe going through that or will be going through that as they claim more of their authentic self, because there is a kind of perceived death of sorts that is happening when you're releasing who you're not?
Well, if you start asserting your own true emotions and saying no where there's a no that wants to be said, some people in your life who you've trained to see you in a certain way will not like it. And so we talk about this tension between attachment, belonging, being accepted, and authenticity. As a child, you had no choice. Whenever it came to a tussle between attachment and authenticity, you had to choose the attachment, give up the authenticity. Now, as an adult, if you start choosing authenticity, you say in a marriage, that's really not working for you. And your partner is just not willing to look at themselves in any way at all, or to work on it. Well, as you grow and as you change, you become more authentic, they're not going to like it. Now you have a decision to make. Do I still choose the attachment and suppress the authenticity? Or do I choose the authenticity at the risk of losing the attachment? What it comes down to is not whether you're going to be in pain or not, because you are. Which kind of pain would you rather be in? Do you want to choose the pain of self-suppression or the choose of the loss of certain attachments? I can almost guarantee it, that as you choose yourself and the authenticity, you'll have new attachments that are higher level, more respectful, more authentic, more meaningful, more fulfilling. But not right away. In the beginning, there might be an estrangement and alienation. There's somebody at the event that you and I participated in last night, whose story I know, who was sexually abused as a child by their grandfather. In fact, They have a book coming out. In fact, I can mention it. The book is called Glimmer. When she got in touch with that and she began to talk about it, a lot of her family renounced her and came to go through the pain of the loss of attachment figures in her life. But not being authentic was killing her.
Yeah.
So it's a question of which pain would you rather have? The pain of suppressing yourself? Because believe me, it's going to cause pain. Or the pain of losing some attachments.
Mm.
That's the choice you have.
It's like either you choose pain or you keep letting pain choose you.
Well, exactly. That's exactly what it is. Now, eventually that pain will heal.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to go through that process, which is why so many people are afraid of going through it.
Speaking of processes, you give in the section on kind of healing, coming back into wholeness within ourselves, you give the 4 A's, which I think are a good process to coming back into that authentic self.
Yeah.
Which I'll share and we can riff on as well.
Sure.
Like pulling these little nuggets. So the 4 A's and 5 compassion, some healing principles. Number 1, first A, is authenticity. We spoke to this, right? By definition, striving for some idealized self-image is incompatible with being authentically who one is.
Yeah.
And the lack of authenticity, as we spoke to, makes itself known through tension or anxiety, irritability or regret, depression or fatigue. The second A is agency. And agency is a capacity to freely take responsibility for our existence, exercising responsibility in all essential decisions that affect our lives to every extent possible. We talked about the alternative, which is being asleep early on.
Or being passive.
Being passive, the hypnotic passivity. The third A is anger, and the fourth A is acceptance. And you share that anger's core message is a concise and potent no, said as forcefully as the moment demands. Very important. And acceptance, beginning with allowing things as they are, however they are, before we can try to integrate it and embrace it and move on. So
and to tell you the truth, we missed out an A that should have been in there, which is called awareness. Because awareness is kind of the ground for all the other 4, and some of you missed. We weren't aware enough to put awareness in there. So the reader will have to forgive us for that. But yeah, and those things are essential for health.
Yeah, beautiful. And the awareness, like you spoke to, that's just so crucial to even begin the process or have the desire to.
Yeah.
You give a really beautiful distinction as to, I mean, I've studied Eastern philosophy, quite a bit, and like that's the type of, I guess, text that I most enjoy reading. And in Eastern philosophy, there's not a whole lot of talk of creativity from my perspective. And I love the framework you give on how sensitivity is tied to our creativity, because creativity is such a big part of why we're here. We are creative beings. We use our life force energy to bring things forth from the unmanifest to the manifest. And oftentimes our sensitivity can be viewed as something that is hindering instead of a superpower. And so how do you view the relationship between the two?
Well, sensitivity is simply a trait that people tend to be born with. It's probably significantly genetically determined. And the more sensitive you are, the word sensitivity itself comes from the Latin word for feeling. The sensere means to feel. So the more sensitive you are, the more you feel. Now, the more you feel, of course, the more you absorb and sense and get in tune with the environment, which is what artists do. Poets, artists, actors, creators of, sculptors, actors, dancers. It's like they have these antennae out that just pull in energies, which really promotes what you call the superpower of creativity. But that same sensitivity also makes them more susceptible to pain, because the same touch that would be experienced as trivial by somebody less sensitive really might hurt the sensitive person. So when you get sensitivity combined with trauma or stress, you get a lot more need to protect yourself. Hence the high rate of addiction amongst, say, actors and musicians. Because they're the sensitive people, they're hurting more.
Yeah.
They have more of a need to escape from their addictions. And you get one Hollywood story after another of some big star divulging their addiction and um, so that same sensitive temperament in a supportive, loving environment just becomes a wonderful, creative leader, joyful, intuitive person. But in an unsupportive environment, they become more distorted, more hurt, more defensive. The creativity doesn't go away, but the creativity starts to serve the personality. And so you look at all these great artists and actors and musicians who their creativity was so amazing that it leads them to stardom. But on a personal level, they just die, and sometimes literally they die. And there's so many examples of it.
Yeah, it's like the sensitivity is almost like if we were to have a piano, and from all the way to the end to the top is like the full spectrum.
Yeah.
The more sensitive we are, the more we have access to within the spectrum of like the human experience.
Exactly.
So it's a beautiful thing to have access to the full piano, to the full spectrum of our emotions, to this human experience. But I think, that invitation that you're sharing is to not have it just serve your personality, but to allow it be an expression from your soul.
Exactly.
And not just our conditioning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the book, we give the example of Aretha Franklin, by the way, who there's a wonderful documentary about her where she gives a concert. I think here in LA, maybe in a church here when she was quite young, and she's just channeling God. I mean, that's the only way you can put it, and that's just coming through her. And then she's got this song R-E-S-P-C-T, Respect, which is kind of an anthem of the women's movement. And she herself was not respected at all. She was an abused child and an abused woman. She had this great creativity, incredible talent, but she was hobbled from being her true self in her personal life. And I think that contributed to the illness that killed her.
The more that you grow on your journey and the vast amount of experience that you've garnered in your life, do you see a divine design within our wounding? For example, nature is obviously intelligent. It doesn't necessarily have to be a higher power and a god and some guy sitting on the clouds, but nature's intelligence is almost, in ways, it feels like, is giving us our wounding so that we can strategically move through what we need to move through to gain true access to ourselves. And so through your experience working with so many people, on the other side of our challenge is our gift. So how do you feel like the link is there? And do you feel like there is that kind of divine design within our wounding and how it shows up and the purpose it serves?
So the Greek playwright Aeschylus has in one of his plays the statement that the master Zeus created us so that we have to suffer into truth. So when you talk about divine design, I just think, I don't want to go to the question of divinity, but there's something about our nature that there's a kind of intelligence in it that wants us to be authentic to ourselves. Not just us, any creature in the world, a plant, an animal, anything. And there's a wonderful spiritual teacher and psychological theorist called A.H. Almas, A-L-M-A-A-S, from whom I've learned a lot. And he writes the following. He says, your conflicts, all the difficult things, the problematic situations in your life are not chance or haphazard. They are actually yours. They're specifically yours, designed for you by a part of you that loves you more than anything else. The part of you that loves you more than anything else has created roadblocks to lead you to yourself. You are not going in the right direction unless there's something pricking you on the side telling you, look here, this way. That part of you loves you so much that it doesn't want you to lose the chance. It will go to extreme measures to wake you up. It'll make you suffer greatly if you don't listen. What else can it do? That's its purpose. Now, this may seem harsh coming from a medical doctor, but physical illness is often an opportunity for people to wake up.
Mm.
I don't wish it on anybody. I've just seen it function that way. So we have a chapter called Diseases Teacher, a dreadful gift, Diseases Teacher. And I've talked to so many people who told me that the illness was the best thing that ever happened to them. And strangely enough, this is even true when I was working in palliative care, ministering to dying people. And somebody would say to me, no, not everybody, but it would happen on occasion, that somebody would say, Doc, I don't know how to express this exactly, but this disease, even though it's killing me, is the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it called me back to myself. And I learned what's important in life and what isn't. No, I don't wish that on anyone.
Yeah.
But it's certainly true that there's something in our inner intelligence that's going to make us suffer if we stray away from ourselves. And so for a lot of people, disease has been a huge wake-up call. And they've used it that way. And when you study these people, they're so much more happier, so much more fulfilled, so much more present for whatever remains to them of life than they were before. And many of them will say, I'll never trade this disease for anything. You know. And some, of course, even recover if they take that process deep enough and if they have the strength and the capacity to do so. But they do look upon the illness as some kind of a gift.
Yeah, it's like the switch between asking why is life treating me this way to what is life trying to reveal to me.
Yeah.
And that's just a powerful reframe and maybe difficult to hear right when you hear the news of a diagnosis or something that you don't want to, wish on somebody. But ultimately, billions of years of evolution have gotten us to this point where the intelligence of nature is so widespread, prevalent, omniscient, omnipotent, and there's no way around it. And we are nature.
Well, that's the whole point.
Contrary to the definition of it, funny enough.
Yeah, we are. And just to assure you, if you came to me with an inflamed wrist, I wouldn't begin to talk to you about what stresses in your life and how you. I deal with your inflammation first, but at some point, that inquiry is so helpful to people,
right?
At the appropriate time,
right? And it might be the only way out, right? Because like if you could go through 3 rounds of chemotherapy and all the ways and through the medical system for trying to heal a cancer, but until you reconcile what is truly at the root, right?
No,
what would you say?
I wouldn't say that. People are cured of cancer.
No, of course.
Without doing that work.
I'm just saying there are certain cases, right, where, for example, unless they heal and reconcile the deeper emotional traumas, they might not be able to be healed through just Western medicine, right? Would you say that?
Well, this is where I make a decision between cure and heal. You can be cured in the sense that the disease will go away. It doesn't mean you're healed.
Yeah.
Healing means becoming whole.
Yeah.
So illness can be an opportunity to become whole, to really heal. But the reality of Western medicine is that it's largely helpless in the face of most chronic conditions. Like we don't know autoimmune conditions like lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, a whole range of them. We can mitigate the symptoms and usually look for deterioration and see that as the prognosis. Yeah. So now, when it comes to acute conditions and some cancers, Western medicine is brilliant, and people can be brought back from the brink of death, or certainly from the brink of debility. But for most chronic conditions of mind and body, we're rather poor at really helping people heal. We just don't have the mindset and the capacity to do so.
Yeah, whether it's the ignorance or the arrogance, like you spoke to earlier.
Yeah.
Why is it essential to be vulnerable to heal?
Well, it's not that it's essential to be vulnerable to be healed, because everybody's vulnerable. Vulnerable simply, it's a Latin word. It means to wound. And vulnerability is the capacity to be wounded. Now, I assure you, we're all totally vulnerable from conception until death. There's no such thing as a human being who's not vulnerable. There's just a lot of human beings who don't want to recognize their vulnerability. So to reframe your question, it's not why is it essential to be vulnerable? We all are.
Just to recognize it.
Why is it essential to come to terms with it, to accept it?
Yeah.
Because nothing in nature grows without vulnerability. So I gave this example in the book. A tree doesn't grow where it's hard and thick. It goes where it's soft and green and vulnerable. Um, take a crustacean animal like a crab. It can't grow inside its shell. When it's hard, it can't grow. It needs to molt and become very soft and vulnerable. So growth and vulnerability go along together. That's why children are so vulnerable, you know. And why is it essential? Because only through vulnerability can we grow. And our denial or a denial of and escape from our vulnerability keeps us stuck, hardened, keeps us really rigid. We can't grow. We can't heal. And you know, you see this in veterans all the time. These men who are programmed into a kind of toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Where killing and accepting being killed are just, that's okay, you know. Then they go through their PTSD treatment and they say, oh my God, I'm vulnerable. I can hurt. I can accept those emotions. I don't have to deny them. I don't have to be this tough guy all the time. You know, so that post-traumatic growth that happens always happens through embracing people's vulnerability. You know.
And then how do you propose people be the most effective and efficient advocate for healing, right? Because oftentimes as we gain awareness and we start to go on the path of healing within ourselves, we then see all the ways in which the people and circumstances around us are not healed, and we can fall into the trap of trying to change people into becoming healed. So
yeah. Well, the first thing is not to be an evangelist. And Almas, who I just quoted, he said once, I think he's the one who said that, protect us from the people that want to save the world, you know.
yeah.
So if you find yourself filled with evangelic fervor, look a bit deeper inside.
Yeah.
What is it that you're trying to do by trying to save the world? That's on the one hand. On the other hand, when I was working with severely addicted people in Vancouver, they would say to me very authentically, Doc, if I ever get out of this, I'm going to spend the rest of my life working to make sure that nobody else has to go through this. So there is as soon as there's healing and a movement towards wholeness, there's a genuine movement towards wanting to heal others.
Yeah.
So that should not be dismissed or derided. It should be honored. But the question is, what's driving it? So if I'm telling you, whenever there's an evangelical fervor where you need somebody to heal, where you need to heal others, but it's a need, then you better watch it.
Yeah.
And you do some more healing yourself. You know, so that's the distinction I'd make.
Yeah. My friend Peter Krohn always says that there's none so self-righteous as the newly converted.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've been through that a number of times.
Yeah.
Where there's a new insight, a new impression, a new wisdom, you might even say, in a way where you want to inflict it on everybody, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And nobody can stand it.
Yeah. But it is that natural tendency, I guess, or inclination of light to spread light, right? It's for awareness to spread awareness. And once we have that growth within ourselves, oftentimes we'll probably want to unconsciously enforce that on other people. But then the deeper desire there is to just expand what wants to expand, which is
healing. Well, take your light analogy. Try pushing light. Can't be done.
Yeah.
And you can shed it. So that desire to push it on others is some unresolved problem that you still haven't dealt with.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, I've been through that.
Yeah. Powerful. Be the light. All right, cool. Last couple very quick questions.
Yeah.
One, thank you so much for this, by the way. And everybody who's been tuning in and loving this conversation, let us know in the comment section below, and check out The Myth of Normal, link in the description. If you haven't already, I highly recommend you purchase it. It's very transformative. What is it like to be 78?
I'm trying to remember. That was 3 weeks ago. I'm 79
Oh,
now.
wow. What is it like to be 79? Happy birthday.
Thank you. What's it like to be anything? Look, this is a sort of a line I've often evoked. You know, so I'm 79 now, and I wouldn't wish to be as young and stupid as I was when I was 78. You know, so I am aware of it is possible to grow old, which doesn't mean to get more decrepit. It means to grow as you're getting old. It's possible to do that, and I hope I hope and pray I can stay on that path. You know. I know that I know more now and I understand more now, accept more now, see more now, can self-regulate more now than I ever could. So in that sense, it's very comfortable. On the other hand, I don't swim as fast as I did 3 years ago or 5 years ago, you know? So that's something to be accepted. So what's it like? So far, I like it. You know, it's not the 79 aspect that I like. It's just having a bit more access to myself. That's what I like.
Hmm. What advice do you have for young lads like me who want and see their trajectory of hopefully growing old and being maybe 100 one day, and up until that point, trying to do healing work and transformative work, much like of what you're doing? What advice do you have for individuals like myself that are on similar paths and trying to spread the light and awareness?
What advice would you have?
For myself?
Yeah, just reverse your question. What advice would you have?
My advice, I guess, for myself in that position would be to continue to stay true to myself and to unravel the gifts that I feel like have uniquely been given to me.
Okay, so my advice is that you don't need my advice.
Great. What for you? What do you feel like for you has been your single-handedly biggest lesson in this life, if you had to pick one?
When you say to people, who do you think you are? That's a really good question. Depending on how it's asked, because you're not who you think you are.
Mm.
If I just know that.
Do you feel like you know yourself?
I'm getting there. I've often said this, you may have heard it, but I've written my epitaph. Do you know what my epitaph is going to be?
Mm.
It's going to be carved on my gravestone. It's going to say, it was a lot more work than I had anticipated. So it's just ongoing work. That's all it is.
Yeah.
But that's not a negative thing.
No.
It's a good thing. It's a glorious thing.
Yeah. Beautiful. What is the strongest memory you have of your life, if you had to pick one?
Strongest memory. What do you mean strongest memory?
Strongest emotional attachment, I guess, you have to a memory that sticks out. When you look over Dr. Gabor Maté's life and you see his history, what stands out as potentially the most impactful memory?
I just don't think I can give you an authentic answer to that. Nothing.
No worries.
But if I allow the question to percolate in me, it's, you know, who comes up is my wife. This is a relationship that I'm in and have been for 55 years. That's the strongest emotional resonance.
Yeah. If you had to put in a succinct way what your wish for humanity is.
Oh, freedom. People need freedom. They need freedom to be themselves. Freedom. If I actually did a workshop here in LA, I participated in it maybe 5-6 years ago, and the theme was, "What is your calling?" And by calling, I didn't mean what profession you choose. What calls you? And when you leave the earth, or when you return to the earth, what would you have wanted to have contributed? So I really got that my calling is that people are free. And so this book, it's all about liberating people or helping people liberate themselves, put it that way. Freedom politically, freedom economically, freedom socially, freedom from their unconscious emotions so they can be themselves. I think that's my desire for human beings is freedom. You know, and that's, I think, the essential endeavor of all the great work that has been done in the world. Is the desire for freedom.
You certainly are doing that. I know personally within my life and a lot of the people that have been students of your work, how much freedom there is on the other side of this gained awareness and everything that we've been talking to today. So your work is very much so doing that. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for coming on today for the second time. I really appreciate it. And here to support any way that I can. Is there any last words that you have for the audience, for anything that you want to share?
Well, you've already said it, but, you know, if I may be self-serving for a moment, I just really want people to be aware of this book of mine, The Myth of Normal. I think I've already been told that it's life-changing for a lot of people. It's also everything that I've worked for took a lot to write this book. I don't say this is a complaint. I'm saying it's a reality. I went through panic. I went through moments of or a few days of high blood pressure, hypertension, all the pressure I put on myself.
Yeah.
And in the end, it's just sort of satisfying expression of what I wanted to say to the world. And there was a patient of mine once who was a great Canadian poet. His name was Warren Tallman. And he became, after I became a doctor, he became my patient. And I said to him once, we'd have these conversations during his office visits. And I'd say, Warren, I want to write, but I don't know what. And he said, Gabor, he says, you'll write when you have something to teach the world. And so this book is an expression of that, of what I've learned and what I wanted to teach. So I just want people to pay attention to it. If you don't want to buy it, take it out of the library. But notice it.
Yeah.
That's my request to the listener.
Beautiful. I strongly encourage that. It's beautiful. It's also read by Daniel Maté, Gabor's son.
Yeah, and I should really mention the book was written with and
Yeah.
narrated by my son Daniel, without whom I could not have done this work.
Yeah.
And he also the narrator of the audio version.
Yeah.
And him and I writing a new book together, where actually it's not going to be Gabor with Daniel, it's going to be Daniel and Gabor, and it'll be called Hello Again, a fresh start for adult children and their parents, which is a workshop that we've done. Believe me, we've had our stuff to go through, my son Daniel and I.
Yeah.
And based on that, what we've learned, we do this workshop, and based on that workshop, we're writing this next book. So
wonderful. I'm impressed at which the scale and magnitude at which you keep going and spreading the good word. So thank you so much. Again, everybody, the link will be in the description for The Myth of Normal, which is available now. Thank you all for tuning into this episode of the Know Thyself podcast. If something in particular resonated with you, let us know in the comment section below. We share clips on social media, have a separate clips channel that's also linked down below. And thank you for coming on this journey with us. Until next time, be well.